speaker is distinguished Toastmaster Mark Richards, who's giving an 8 to 10 minute speech. He's working on the dynamic leadership pathway, and it's Negotiate the Best Outcome Project. The title is Marc Nancy Anders and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. The purpose of the speech is for the member to share some aspect of a past or future negotiation in his or her life. Sunday, July 2nd, 2023 is a date Mark won't soon forget. His experience demonstrates what happens when communication breaks down. Take it away.
Thank you, Karen, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, most honored guests. There are 3 types of travel adventures that you can have when you're traveling by plane. The first one is the optimum and the best one. That's when you sail through security. You get on the plane, you take your materials, you put it in the overhead bin, you get your seat, the exact seat you want. The plane takes off, no turbulence. You land on time, and you get your bags just the way that you expect. The second type of plane travel is where you have a little bit of a challenge in through security. In my case, they always do a pat down because I can't go through the x-ray. And that's not a big deal, but that would always slow me down. You might get on the plane, and as you're putting your material in the overhead bin, somebody bumps you and it falls on the ground. Maybe during takeoff, it's a little bit shaky, and you might have just a little bit of turbulence. But you get to your destination, and overall, you had a good flight. The third type of travel misadventure and exploration would be the type of travel that I had on July 2nd. That's where everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And we had a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. There are 5 things that went wrong that day. I'm going to talk about 3 of them. The first the first thing that went wrong is when I got to the terminal, we had to check our bags in. And when we checked our bags in, one of the agents happened to notice that my wheelchair had blinking lights on the wheels. This wheelchair is a manual wheelchair. I control it with my arms. However, and it's not a power wheelchair, it's a power wheelchair usually has a joystick. Because it has power, it is a hybrid, which is very unusual. In all of the regulations for the FAA, they don't take into account a very bizarre and unique type of wheelchair. I was questioned at the terminal about taking these batteries. They asked me what kind they were. I told them they're lithium ion. This is a sample of the lithium ion battery. It weighs about 5 pounds. In the past 20 years, I've been able to fly without a problem. What I usually do is take the battery with me into the cabin, and they stow the wheelchair underneath. Easy peasy. But I was challenged. And this is we flew out of Burbank, and now we're in Portland. And I have to fly from Portland back to Burbank to get my plane. Unbeknownst to us, to Nancy and I, they had taken our plane, which is an Alaska Airlines 737, and booked us on a Horizon Air airplane that was much smaller. Don't know the exact name. And they did not have the capability. For some reason, this plane didn't allow the wheelchair to go in the hold. There was no place to secure it. Now, this wheelchair is a little bit heavy, probably weighs about 50 pounds without the batteries. And I was thinking, wait a minute, there might be luggage that weighs more than 50 pounds. but apparently because of the wheels, and again, there was no way to secure it. Now, I had to negotiate with the ticket counter and the people at the gate to figure out how I can possibly get from Portland to Burbank. They told me that there was a flight leaving in 4 hours. That would be a 737 from Portland to Burbank. What they didn't know, and what I'm telling you now, is I have a great deal of difficulty later in the day if I haven't had a chance to lay down, just the way my body is. Usually if I lay down, I'm good. I did not feel like waiting 4 hours sitting upright to take a flight. What was the next possibility, I said? Is there something from here that goes to Burbank? There isn't, they said, but there is an exception. We can fly you from Burbank to LAX. Then you can take a vehicle to Burbank. Really? They gave us a lift ticket. And I thought, okay, well, it was a comped ride. What they didn't know is that I cannot get into a car and have somebody take my wheelchair and put it in the trunk. It weighs too much, and it's hard for me to get in. I need a wheelchair accessible vehicle. I will come back to this in the third part of my speech. The second challenge that we had was when we were getting ready to go on the plane. Everyone had already boarded, and I was the last one. We were the last people to get on. My wheelchair is this wide. The aisle is about this wide. And for me to get on the plane, I have to get into an aisle chair, which is about this wide. The aisle chair is sitting right next to me, and for me to get on, well, normally I can transfer into surfaces by myself. I had to be lifted to get onto this aisle chair. They had sent a young man and a woman about my age. She kept complaining about how she had neck surgery the week before and couldn't lift my legs. It's like, really? She did not offer to find somebody that could help us. Again, I tried negotiating with her, but it didn't really work. My wife, Nancy, had to pick up my legs while the young man helped transfer me into the aisle chair. That was part A. Part B was on the plane. Nancy and my dog Anders service dog, were already in the aisle. Again, unbeknownst to us, they had booked us on a seat that was part of the structure of the plane. And in most seats, as you know, the armrest goes up. When that happens, I can just transfer straight over, not a big deal. I can do a lot of the work myself. But this bulkhead seat had an armrest that did not go up. So I had to be lifted over the bulkhead's armrest that didn't go up. The young man is behind me. The elderly woman, not elderly, I'm not elderly. The woman had neck surgery didn't even come on the plane. She could tell that I was not really that interested in having her be with me. The gentleman, one seat up from us, a passenger, said, "I can help you." So the young man behind me and the passenger lifted me up over the armrest and into my seat. Wow, that was an incredible accomplishment. Finally, the third challenge that we had during this most extraordinary adventure was when we landed in LAX. We had to get from LAX to Burbank. We had to take an accessible vehicle, and neither the Lyft or Uber had a wheelchair accessible vehicle. I know that because I've tried in the past. The porter was great. He waved down a taxi that just happened to have wheelchair access. We took this horrible ride back to Burbank because they tied my wheelchair down, but unfortunately, this non-English speaking native person didn't understand I needed a seatbelt. So we're driving on the freeway. My chair wouldn't have a problem if we had to stop short, but I had no seatbelt. Now this is not 1962, when they didn't have seatbelts. It was always optional. We finally get to Burbank, and when we finally get home, instead of a 3.5 to 4 hour adventure, it had turned into a 6, almost 7 hour adventure. Now we also had to unpack enough of our material to get home and get to sleep. I used to get to sleep around 9:30 or so, and it was already 11:30, almost midnight by the time we finally got to sleep. It was a travel misadventure that I will never forget. A terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. I will say this, of all the things that happened to us that day, one of the things that shone through was not the FAA regulations that were a little bit confusing, I understand. It was the people who who restored my faith in humanity. It was the ticket counter person who gave us this lift ticket. He was trying to do his best job. It was the flight attendants who tried their best to help me get comfortable. It was the passenger who helped transfer me into the seat. It was the porter at the Lyft Uber taxi station who got us the lift. These were people that really made this trip awesome. It was everything else that I hope I never forget because it taught me some lessons. It was an exploration and a seriously wrong type of experience, which I hope you never experience. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Mark. You turned that litany of challenges into a very